Hi, I'm Scott Cosenza in for Sarah Cowgill, along with John Clark, Dave Patterson, and Graham Noble. And this is the Conservative 5 for today, an online TV production of Liberty Nation News. The U.S. Supreme Court just finished their term with a flurry of cases and one unresolved issue. They weighed in on requiring age verification to access adult content online and trans surgeries for children and LGBTQIA++ indoctrination in the public schools, plus more. And the biggest case of all, birthright citizenship, but really universal injunctions. Donald Trump seems happy with the outcome, though. Let's take a look at this clip.
An amazing decision, one that we're very happy about. This morning, the Supreme Court has delivered a monumental victory for the Constitution, the separation of powers, and the rule of law in striking down the excessive use of nationwide injunctions to interfere with the normal functioning of the executive branch. The Supreme Court has stopped the presidency itself. That's what they've done.
Well, it's great when you win, right? I mean, Donald Trump is always a fan of winning, and he celebrated the court's work because he won the big case. I'll come out of the gate and just talk about it for a second here, which is it's the birthright citizenship case that wound up having nothing to do with birthright citizenship at the Supreme Court. Instead, tackled the universal injunctions, which Donald Trump was so happy about having go by the wayside. Basically, what the Supreme Court said in a 6-3 decision was that these universal injunctions that district courts often offer to challenge any particular action that the administration does, they're going away. The Supreme Court the rule that they've articulated, it doesn't say that they are impossible to implement if they're a district court judge, but the bar or the barrier to do so is so high that it effectively stops them almost altogether. And if a judge does it, some Biden appointee who got light vetting at the Senate, perhaps, who's maybe a little more motivated politically rather than legally, they're going to get smited down by an intermediate appellate court, most likely because of this ruling. So it was funny, though. I thought, to me, the funniest thing was how Trump thanks the justices like they're politicians. Like if some politician passes, it's like, I want to thank Senator Cruz from Texas for help. It's like, I want to thank Justice Barrett because she wrote the opinion. Well, yeah, it's just so funny how he breaks down that wall. And of course, other presidents might have thought that, but they never said it. They would have just said that they thank the work of the court for attending to these issues and, working for the American people, kind of a thing. So anyway, that was the big case. These universal injunctions have stymied the president and his administration and others as well. So it's no struggle to see why Trump is delighted about it. But what about for liberty? I struggle with it. Graham, I want to ask you, we have a system now where judges can be the protectors of Americans against unconstitutional actions by the government, by the executive, which we know they do all the time, whether it's a Trump administration or a Biden administration. They regularly violate the rights of the people. Is this an important protection that's been lost, or how do you view it?
That's, Scott, I wrestle with this all the time, because we're talking 1803 here, Marbury v. Madison, when, the kind of, for want of a better way of putting it, the idea of judicial review was essentially kind of then codified, if you like, if that's the right word to use. But
I like invented. I like invented, but you pick your own.
This idea that judges can strike down laws that violate the Constitution is a wonderful concept. But then what happens, and also you'd think, you want our elected leaders to be the ones who, write the laws and implement policy without interference from unelected judges. But at the same time, if there's no barrier against the lawmakers, whether you're talking about the executive branch or the legislative branch, if there's nothing stopping them, nothing reining them in, then then they pass laws that do violate the Constitution. Quite often, I'd argue that an awful lot of the laws that we have on the books now, federal, state, and local level, violate the Constitution. Most of them, in fact.
Yeah, most is right. That's my perspective too.
So where is it? I'm not enough of a legal scholar. Well, I'm not a legal scholar at all, but I'm not enough of a legal scholar to say which is the better way to go. I like the idea, like you, Scott. I like the idea of executive power being reined in. I like the idea of the power of Congress being reined in, actually, as well. But it's a double-edged sword. You've got people on the lawmaking side, but you also now have people on the judicial side because they were appointed. They were essentially political appointees. And unfortunately, too many of them now remain wedded to their politics and put that above the Constitution and above the law. And so, which way do you go? Either way you go, somebody is violating the Constitution somewhere along the line.
John Clark, you're a constitutional lawyer and a liberty lover. What's on your mind when you read this decision?
Well, that decision in particular was, I really wasn't expecting it in that context. I wasn't sure how the birthright citizenship decision would go, and they punted on that one. I think it was the right decision because I think the answer...
Let me just correct you, just for people's understanding. They didn't punt on that decision. They never agreed to take it in the first place. That decision has not yet reached the Supreme Court. And I'm taking the time to correct because I know that you know what I'm saying because you're an attorney, but so many others don't. When the district court got the case of challenging Trump's actions, they immediately put a stop to it and said, you can't go through with this while we're deciding whether or not it's legal for you to take these actions you've contemplated. And then that decision went to the Supreme Court, and they're now able to take those actions unless and until the district court rules otherwise about the main issue that birthright citizenship either must be protected because of the Constitution or not. But the injunction business is just separate. I just want to set the table on that, and thank you.
And thank you for the correction. So you're saying it really wasn't ripe or even before the court. It'll come up another time, presumably. But this issue is perhaps even more monumental. I think that what Graham's hinting at, though, is that there is a balance. We certainly do not want a runaway executive. The whole point of the judicial branch is to hold not just the executive, but the legislative branch accountable without themselves replacing interpretations of the law with their own. And when you can look at the least common denominator judge in the country and judge shop, so to speak, to find one judge who can shut down the entire executive branch, you have totally turned the entire constitutional structure on its head, and that is now ended. You referenced President Trump's overt acknowledgement of thanks to certain court justices. That's maybe just being transparent because I don't think the Supreme Court has ever, at least in my lifetime, been this overtly partisan. And we see that with the Three Stooges. The consistent dissents that
panelists' words are their own and do not necessarily reflect that of the editorial staff or management of LibertyNation.com. Go ahead, the Three Stooges.
Well, it just popped into my head. It was a Freudian slip, I guess. I didn't say who, but it
was a 6-3 decision, by the way, for those listening and watching. And three in the minority were Justice Sotomayor, Justice Kagan, and Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson.
And those were the Stooges I was referring to, which is my own opinion as a libertarian. But it's really obvious. I mean, it's really overt. You can almost predict how this court will rule on certain hot-button issues. And so, but I think once again, the balance between the judiciary and the executive and legislative branches is potentially the course that our Supreme Court and our country continues to need to steer carefully. And that very striation of partisanship on the court is disturbing.
We've got time to discuss one of the other issues that the court went through. And I know, John, you did write about it for the pages of LibertyNation.com, which was their ruling on basically parental choice in LGBTQIA++ indoctrination. A very liberal school district right down the road where I'm sure lots of bureaucrats and lobbyists send their kids to in Montgomery County, Maryland, had one of these. There was a book a while back called Heather Had Two Mommies, I think it was. It was like the main talking point in this space, but I guess that's old school now. The new book was about a woman, a girl who had getting two uncles instead of two mommies. And, these devoutly religious people didn't want their kids propagandized to that it was such a beautiful thing that same-sex marriage would occur in a family, which is the sole purpose of the reading. And the court said the parents had a constitutional right for their own religious practice to be notified of it and get an opt-out. What do you think, John Clark?
Well, I think it was the right decision and for the right reasons. We have a lot of that here in Vermont. In fact, we have some books like the book Gender Queer, which are overtly they are graphic novels with depicting acts of sex as well. So where is that line, that balance again? And the left has said, well, this will mean, women can't even express that they're feminist and all these histrionics, but hopefully the schools will just find that balance. And in the article I wrote for Liberty Nation about it, I compared it to abortion. You could teach children at some appropriate age, because one of the issues here you could see clearly influence the core is these are very young children. These are kindergartners, and you can't teach them about tolerance towards gay people without also teaching them what gay means and what copulation is. And these are things that traditionally, whether religious or not, a lot of parents don't want their children to be brought into that level of enlightenment that early. But if the school at some age-appropriate time were to teach about these subjects, I made the comparison to abortion. It's one thing to teach what abortion is. It's another to teach that it's absolutely evil or a wonderful good. And that's what the court emphasized about these materials, and the dissent tried to dismiss, is that they weren't just sharing with children about these issues of homosexuality and transgenderism. They were sharing a very strong moral perspective, and even the court indicated they were sort of penalizing children who dared say anything otherwise as hurting the feelings of the recipients. So here in Vermont, particularly, this has gone way too far. So the emphasis of the court, by the way, wasn't to ban the materials either. It is to give parents
No,
right.
this has nothing to do. This is about a parent's right, and we appreciate that. Possible exception of your use of the word enlightening to describe what happens when a child is exposed to.
I was being facetious, I think, and I hope
I know that. There's an interesting side issue here, and I wonder if you've thought about it at all, and I'll take your very brief response if you have. There's a potential here that Satanists, literal Satanists who have established religions, the Church of Satan or whatever they call it, but they actually have the same legal rights that a Christian church might have, or a synagogue or a mosque, that they may be able to say to school districts, hey, we didn't get a chance to opt out of your instruction that venerated, for instance, traditional marriage or some other thing that could be called a JudeoChristian. Is that going to be a thing we see in the courts with black nail polish and challenge?
Well, I think we already have. There have been some similar challenges, though. It depends on where one is in the public school system in America, because most public schools aren't pushing traditional marriage. But that is the gray area of the decision. It will be up, and the dissent made this point very strongly, Sotomayor's dissent, that it's going to leave schools to try to figure out how to still incorporate materials that are broad and monitor the opt-out provision if you have a myriad of potential faiths. But as the majority pointed out, too, this is a problem of their own making. They refused to listen to hundreds of parents in Maryland who were protesting. And ultimately, did the schools serve the parents, and do the parents have the right to oversee their children's moral upbringing, including Satanists? Or is the public sphere going to replace that and step into the area of morality, which it really has in the last 30 years. It's become much more of an ideological focal point, and it's contributing to the deterioration of public schools and why more and more people are opting for homeschooling, as I've also written about. So I do think it'll be up to the schools, state by state, perhaps, to navigate those boundaries of what's reasonable and what parents should be allowed to opt out of.
Dave, I know you were chomping at the bit there to add your 2 cents, but sadly we're just out of time for this segment, so we'll have to get your court commentary at another time. Thank you for your comments. The court is on a summer break now, and the media coverage is about to die down, and we'll be gearing up for more coverage of the court as things get closer to them starting their session again in October. Thanks for watching. That's it for our Conservative 5/4 panel today. Check out our other C5 shows and segments on your favorite video platform, YouTube, Vimeo, Rumble. We're on them all. Liberty Nation News also has its own Roku channel where you can see all of our TV productions. Liberty Nation does not endorse candidates, campaigns, or legislation, and this presentation is no endorsement. I'm your host, Scott Cosenza, in for Sarah Calgill. Thanks for joining us today for the latest news and commentary. Your choice for free thinking, free speech. LibertyNation.com.